So I said, well, what percentage of people here in Washington, not just congressmen, but their staffs and people that work at these agencies and all, what percentage of people in Washington are compromised in some way? Either with the Polaroid thing or with bribery or blackmail or... This is 1988, Sean. This person looks at me and says, about 99%. 99%.
Hey friends, Sean from SGTReport.com here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Just a quick note for those of you who are members at SGTReport.tv or patrons of mine, you will be getting the exclusive weekend wrap with my good friend Frank from Quite Frankly. That will be posting on Saturday the 26th of October. And friends, stay tuned. So much more to come next week. I have an absolutely packed week of great guests, so stay tuned. And before we begin this one with my good friend Dr. Dave Janda, just a quick word from this interview sponsor. Tumeric has a long list of health benefits, and consuming it is essential to revitalizing how you look and feel. However, turmeric by itself is not enough, which is why Ageless Body was created. Ageless Body provides premier support for healthy aging, cellular energy, very bright brain, and much more. Once you start taking this amazing pill, you'll enjoy powerful support for younger looking skin, peak energy levels, mental focus, healthy eyes, and more. Plus, it's non-GMO, contains no artificial ingredients, and is independently lab tested to ensure potency and purity. Get your own bottle for 51% off plus free shipping by going to agewithsgt.com or by clicking the link, which I'll provide below this video. And welcome back, friends. Thank you so very much for tuning in. It's wonderful to have you all back. Thanks for finding us on sgtreport.tv or on Patreon. And this one is also on YouTube. I'm grateful to have back on the line Dr. Dave Janda. How are you, Dave?
I'm great, Sean. Thank you so very much for having me back on your great platform.
Thanks for agreeing to come back on. I know you're such a very busy guy. Hey, I want to start with this. Let me do a screen share. This is in remembrance of 3 people who were murdered. Stephen Head, 24 years old, Torrin Hudson, 26 years old, and 48-year-old Scott Smallwood. They were murdered while sitting outside of a restaurant in Louisville. A black man walked up to them, a 33-year-old black man walked up to them and killed them, murdered them, shot them at point-blank range. And he was wearing a Kaepernick Ali t-shirt, and the mainstream media has completely ignored this story. Dave, I bring it up because imagine if it had been a white man wearing a Trump t-shirt or a white man wearing a pro-First Amendment t-shirt who had murdered 3 people, regardless of their color.
Oh, and let's not forget about the riots that would have immediately ensued.
That's right.
With the destruction of millions of dollars worth of property in Louisville and tens of millions of dollars worth of property and people's incomes, lives that they had built across the country. Yeah, Sean. This assailant went into that bar and reportedly did not know them, and walked up and, in cold-blooded murder, killed these 3 people as you outlined. So this was almost a week before the decision came through on Breonna Taylor. But the owner of the facility where this happened, establishment, Bungalow Joe's Bar and Grill, I want to read something that he actually tweeted. Joe Bishop is his name. Here's what he says, quote, "Let me set the record straight. Last night, a deranged or drugged up person walked up to my patio at Bungalow Joe's, walked over to a group of my regulars and employees who were enjoying themselves and shot 3 people point blank. There was no motivation, no altercation, no fight. He indiscriminately shot and killed 3 people for no reason. I had many of my employees and customers sitting there that are now forever traumatized. I lost a good friend, and my manager lost the man she was going to marry. The other 2 customers were extremely well liked by all my staff. Please say a prayer for the families. They lost a son, father, boyfriend, and brother. Please say a prayer for my employees. They will forever remember the night that a sick person killed 3 people."
Yeah, it's just
Okay.
enraging. It's just absolutely enraging, Dave, because CNN would love to stoke the fires, and they will stoke the fires anytime anything bad happens involving a white officer. But in this case, a black man shot three people, two of whom were white, one of whom was black, and the media's been silent about this. So I just wanted to bring it up in remembrance of those poor victims who were murdered in cold blood by a nutcase who was black, and the media's silent. And the reason I bring this up, Dave, is because I really think people have lost their minds. Honestly, people on the left have really been possessed by the spirit of the Antichrist. I keep saying this, but look at the demonic reactions spewing out of people, young women in many cases, when they heard that Ruth Bader Ginsburg had died. It's literally like they're possessed by the Antichrist. They're possessed by demons, and all of that stuff spews out of their mouths when they scream and cry and lament the death of this woman who worshipped at the altar of abortion.
Sean, I think you're absolutely correct. And if you look at when President Trump and the First Lady went to the Supreme Court to pay their respects to Justice Ginsburg, I don't know if you saw the clips, but so this is supposed to be a solemn situation. There were these deep state zealots, because that's what they are, deep state zealots. To say, that they're just the left, they're more than that. They are true terrorists. The reaction of Donald Trump coming to show his respects at essentially a wake, they were yelling and screaming about grant her wish. In other words, supposedly, the marketing is that her last wish was, well, that they don't fill her seat until after the election. Give me a break. On her deathbed, she said that. I don't buy it. I don't buy it.
And even if she said it, who gives a damn?
Well,
It doesn't matter. It's not constitutional.
Sean, I have a prediction. On my deathbed, on your deathbed, on every one of our listeners' deathbeds, the last thing we're probably, I can assure you, talk about, reminisce about, is something related to work. If we have the ability to speak, we're going to say things to our family that are there about how we love them and thank them and the like. The last thing we're going to do is make a political statement. I mean, it's just a bunch of deep state marketing. If Ruth Bader Ginsburg was truly sincere and really wanted her legacy to fall into the hands of somebody that's a deep state player, she had ample opportunity. She had 8 years to step aside when Obama was president and help handpick somebody for her legacy. She did not do that. And this is a woman that had already been diagnosed with a fatal condition in the past. I mean, you got to give her credit. She lasted longer than 99% of people that are diagnosed with the number of cancers, including the pancreatic cancer she was diagnosed with. And I agree with you when you say that these are consumed with evil. And I'll give you a quote that I just happened to be paging through some stuff about my mom, and she passed 14 years ago. And she was a teacher, and she was a historian, and just an incredible motivating force, not just in my life, but anyone who touched her life. And here's a quote she said, and she drilled into this into me from the time I was a little kid. Ruth Janda used to say, quote, "Evil only has power if you become fearful. Always stand strong and take action against evil," unquote. One of the big problems I see on the freedom side of the equation is we realize what's happening is wrong. And we might even take a stand, but we don't take action. And I don't mean violence in any way. What I'm saying is this needs to be called out. You do it, I do it, but what about our listeners? You know, when they're with their family and their family starts spewing stuff about Trump or whatever, freedom or whatever, say, you know what? Give me a break. Look in the mirror and look around you who you're associating with. These people are sociopaths, psychopaths. These people that you're associating with are truly evil. That's not only taking a stand, that's taking action. And many people are concerned in the freedom movement. Well, I don't want to get my neighbors mad. I don't want to get my coworkers mad. I don't want to get my family mad. All right, then you're going to pay the price. And so is our country.
You know, that's very interesting. I don't know that you saw this. I put this in a video on September 22nd. Let me show you this. Dave, this is actor Jim Caviezel. You may know him from playing Jesus in the most powerful film ever made, The Passion of the Christ. He was on Fox News the other day talking about exactly what you were just talking about. Listen to this. Listen to the last part of his speech here.
But every lesson in history tells us that the greater risk lies in appeasement. And this is a specter our well-meaning Christian liberal friends, our priests, bishops, and pastors refuse to face. That their policy of accommodation is appeasement. And it gives us no choice between peace and war, only between fight and surrender. If we continue to accommodate, continue to back and retreat, eventually we will have to face the final demand, the final ultimatum. And what then? When Satan has told the people of this world he knows what our answer is going to be, he has told them that we're retreating under the pressure of his Cold War, and someday when the time is right to deliver his final ultimatum, our surrender will be voluntary, because you see, by then we will have been so weakened from within, spiritually, morally, economically. He believes this because from our side he's heard voices pleading for peace at any price, or better red than dead, or as one commentator put it, he'd rather live on his knees than die on his feet. And therein lies the road to war, because those voices don't speak for the rest of us. You and I know it and do not believe that life is so dear and peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery. If nothing in life is worth dying for, when did this begin? Just in the face of this enemy? Or should Moses have told the children of Israel to live in slavery under the Pharaohs? Should Christ have refused the cross? Should the patriots at Concord Ridge have refused to fire the shot heard around the world? The martyrs of history were not fools, and our beloved dead who gave their lives to stop the advance of the Nazis did not die in vain. Where then lies the road to peace? Well, it's a simple answer after all, that you and I have the courage to tell our enemies there is a price we will not pay, there is a point beyond which evil must not advance. In the words of Reagan, evil is powerless if the good are unafraid.
Evil is powerless if the good are unafraid. That's exactly what you were just talking about, Dave. And this is the war in which we're engaged. It's clearly now become a spiritual war. It's just never been more clear. I'm going to keep saying it. And the left is beholden to the spirit of the Antichrist. And I'm not just talking about BLM and Antifa. I'm talking about the politicians. I'm talking about the Congress critters and the senators on the left. It's very clear who they serve.
Oh, it's very clear. They're all, and it's not just a left-right thing, axis issue, Sean. There are many people on the right, supposed right, who are also owned by these deep state demons. And all you have to do is look at the Paul Ryans of the world, look at the John McCains of the world. These are deep state players, and they had an R after their name, and that's part of the deception that the deep state runs. So I want to take you back. I started working on healthcare policy in 1988 when Ronald Reagan had asked me to come to Washington and work on healthcare policy with C. Everett Koop because of my work in prevention and healthcare cost containment. And when I first got there, they have kind of this orientation meeting for three of us that were new to the administration, if you will. And one of his administrative assistants walked in the room, very pleasant woman, and she said, "We want everybody on the same page of the playbook. You're here to develop policy that focuses on freedom. As far as the president is concerned, the right-left axis is theater. The axis to focus on is up versus down. Up being freedom, down being oppression. She didn't say deep state. She didn't say globalist syndicate. She didn't say New World Order. She said there are people in the government and outside the government that focus their attention and energy and policies on the oppression side of that axis. And your goal and your objective is to focus on going on that up-down axis, on the up axis, on freedom. Because in focusing on the up axis, you automatically suppress those that are focused on oppression.
Right.
That was 1988.
Right. And Reagan, well, Jim Caviezel was quoting Reagan, too, when he was speaking about freedom and the battle in which we're engaged against essentially Luciferian powers, right? Mm-hmm. The battle between good and evil, the battle between Satan and Jesus Christ, the battle between life and death. It's all culminating right now in our lifetimes. So these are very, very exciting times in which to be alive, but at the same time, scary times, because we know if the enemy gets control, if the enemy gets the White House, if the enemy takes control of the Senate and the Congress and the judiciary, it's game over for humanity. It's certainly game over for this country. So let's talk about this Saturday. I believe the president is going to announce his picks for Ruth Ginsburg's replacement, one of whom is Amy Barrett. She's a judge. She's a mother of 7, two of those children are adopted children from Haiti, and I believe they're black. And she and her husband will be despised by the left regardless because abortion, Dave. They're going to hate her because of the abortion issue. Get this, Dave. I saw a video, I think I retweeted it, maybe I'll try to find it, yesterday, of a young girl having an absolute emotional breakdown in her car
I saw
over abortion, and she even says that she wishes she had been aborted.
I saw that as well. What a sad statement. What a sad statement for that young woman who is gifted in many ways. She just didn't show it in that video. But to say that she wished she was never born. You know, Sean, you mentioned Amy Coney Barrett and abortion. Right now, they've been trying to market that their animosity, the deep state's animosity toward her is because of her religious beliefs and because she's a Catholic. When she was up for the circuit court nomination, Feinstein hit her about that, about her Catholicism. But here's something about Amy Coney Barrett that nobody speaks about. You mentioned she has 7 children, 2 of which are adopted, as you mentioned. The youngest child, not adopted, of her and her husband, is his name is Benjamin.
Special needs, I think, right?
He has Down syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And she found out he had Down syndrome long before he was born and elected to have the birth. See, this is the story of why the deep state really wants to go after her, because she's a living example of someone who was told of the diagnosis of the baby having Down syndrome, giving the choice of abortion and saying, no, we're going to have this child. I want to read a quote she said about Benjamin. Benjamin, our youngest, has special needs, and that presents unique challenges for all of us. But I think all you need to know about Benjamin's place in the family is summed up by the fact that the other children unreservedly identify Benjamin as their favorite sibling, end quote. You see, Sean, the deep state despises people that talk the talk, but they absolutely attack and demonize those who not only talk the talk, but walk the walk. This is why they despise Amy Coney Barrett. This is why they despise Donald Trump. This is why they despise General Michael Flynn, because they're not hypocrites and they can't control or leverage them. And this is why they target them. And the word I believe that's accurate for President Trump and for General Flynn, and if nominated Amy Coney Barrett, or whoever the nominee is going to be, is they persecute those that not only talk the talk, but walk the walk. It's the same reason why, Sean, your videos and my videos and a number of other of our, if you will, colleagues in the independent media that talk the talk and walk the walk and are not compromised or hypocritical, why our videos not only don't get monetized, but get shoved down the search engines so that as few people see them as possible. It's the same thing.
Can I ask you something? Let me ask you about the deep state in the coming coup. We're obviously all concerned about these mail-in ballots.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a deep state faction of people, including retired Marine General John Allen, Marine General John Kelly, Navy Admiral Mike Mullen, people like General Mattis, Colin Powell, that are openly spitballing about the potential for a military coup if somehow the left manufactures a win for Biden over endless counting of ballots that could go on, we're told, weeks after the election. These people are floating the idea that if and when the manufactured victory for Biden occurs, if President Trump does not step down, they're going to need to employ the military to force him out of the White House. What do you make of all of that? Is it as treasonous as it sounds?
Well, yes, I believe it is treasonous. Yes, I believe they should be held accountable for their actions and their words, not just their actions, their words, because they're trying to incite a riot, trying to incite a removal of power. Sean, this coup started probably 3 seconds after Donald Trump was announced the winner in November of 2016. And it's taken on many forms. Starting a month before he was inaugurated, December 2016, I went on record and said there's already a coup in place to remove the president-elect, because remember when we went through that remember Jill Stein goat rodeo and everything that was going on. Remember they were trying, let's upend the electoral college. We tend to forget about that. They were already instituting the coup when he was a president-elect. What about the Carter Page thing and the FISA, where they were involved, where they really started, and especially when you look at some of these whistleblower who stepped forward about the illegal surveillance that was occurring of General Flynn, of President Trump, Citizen Trump at the time, years ago, using illegal surveillance platforms by Obama, Brennan, Clapper, Comey, Mueller, in a parallel fashion. Not just the NSA stuff, but the illegal surveillance occurring through the Hammer. They already were targeting Donald Trump so that they could use that to remove him from power if he ever got to the head of the seat of power.
Well, right, and nothing they did worked. Russiagate, 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 complete and total bold-faced lies, and everybody now knows it, so now they're even getting more desperate, and they're talking about a military coup.
Well, right, and President Trump actually addressed this at his Labor Day press conference. Here's what he said about this. He was asked about how the Pentagon was handling the fact that he was bringing troops home from Afghanistan and the like. Here's what he said, quote, "The top people in the Pentagon probably aren't happy because they want to do nothing but fight wars so that all of those wonderful companies that make the bombs and make the planes and make everything else, they stay happy," end quote. He was telling you, and he was absolutely accurate, there is this incestuous relationship. Eisenhower warned us, what, 1960?
I was just going to say that.
The military-industrial complex, right?
That's right. And President John F. Kennedy warned of the same.
Right, and look what happened to Kennedy. Right? I mean, with Kennedy, the military didn't walk in and take him out. But reportedly, our intelligence agencies, combined with some friends in the mafia, combined with some friends in the FBI, combined with some friends in other rogue agents and agencies, had a lot to do with all deep state players.
Now, President Trump has so much courage. He really does, because he does speak truths like that we haven't heard spoken since John F. Kennedy. Every president after John F. Kennedy, up until Trump, has been in the pocket of these people, part of the shadow government. Bush Sr., former CIA, give me a break. His son then becomes president, and who made the Clintons? Bush Sr.
Well, and look what happened, and other than President Trump, and I am a bit biased because, I did do some work for his administration.
Ronald Reagan. That's true.
But Sean, many people don't remember.
Yeah, they tried to take him out and implement George Bush, who was what, vice president at the time?
He was in office, I believe, 2 months at the time.
People forget that. You're right.
And he was taken out. And I mean, if it wasn't for the Secret Service agent who pushed him in the car, and Reagan said, "Oh, I'm okay," and then Reagan started to spit up some blood. If it wasn't for that Secret Service agent redirecting the driver from going to the White House where they were headed to George Washington University Trauma Center, Ronald Reagan would have died.
And who would have become president?
George H.W. Bush, the former director of the CIA.
I would still love to know what it was that George Bush, I like to call him Jr., and his wife and his brother were looking at George Bush Sr.'s funeral. You remember that famous video clip where they look absolutely horrified?
I believe they were delivered the message that their jig was up. That the deep state operation, that all the Bushes and all the Clintons and all the Obamas and the Romneys and the McCains and the Ryans and whatever that were involved with, that the jig was up. That's what I believe. When you look at Jeb Bush's reaction, it wasn't directed at his father's coffin or because his father had been dead for days before that. It was what was shown to him. And I believe what was shown to him was that the deep state operation that they were all a part of was dismantled.
So let me ask you this. If that's the case, and I believe that is very much a possibility, that is something that was communicated to them, how is it that these people who I just mentioned, Mattis, Colin Powell, how is it that they could float even the possibility of this idea that the military could be used somehow to be weaponized and turned against President Trump in a contentious election, because the military loves Trump? Is the problem that so many of these generals and colonels, the Pentagon brass, are corrupt? Is that the problem? Because I think the rank and file military loves Trump.
I completely agree with you. And the answer to your question is yes, I believe they're all compromised. And why do I believe that? Let me take you back to another conversation.
You remember all the pedophile stuff at the Pentagon. Do you remember all of the files of pedophiles? Literally emails and pedophilic pictures and all sorts of stuff at the Pentagon. All sorts of stories about that, and then nobody ever goes to jail.
Oh no, it's like being on Wall Street, right?
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt. Is that where you're?
Well, here's where let me take you to a conversation 2 months after the conversation I just told you about in the White House. We was at a meeting at the White House, and a very well-known political figure, I will not tell you who, I was sitting next to, and it was time to go to lunch, and we were going to lunch, and he looked at me and he said, "Dave, you're an honest guy. And you're here for the right reason, to make a positive impact for the public. And you're new to this, and I don't want to see you get compromised so that all your good ideas don't come to fruition. Kind of looking at this guy like, okay. And he said, I'm going to give you some advice. And it might sound off the wall, but I want you to listen to it. Okay, fine. He looked at me and he said, Dave, when you're in Washington, you can go to any dinner with any guy or woman you want, or a baseball game, or a movie, or whatever. He goes, but listen to me. Never go to a private party in Washington, D.C., and that includes at the vice president's house. The vice president at the time was George H.W. Bush. I said, okay. I'm not a big party guy. I'm boring, but okay. He goes, no. He goes, listen to me. It might seem to be an innocuous situation. Football game. You're invited by a congressman to go over to Congressman so-and-so's house to watch a football game. Okay. He goes, you're there and there's alcohol. Okay. And you might think, well, that's kind of strange. There's alcohol here and it's really an adult party and there's some kids walking around. That's kind of weird. He goes, but Dave, someone will slip something into your drink. You will wake up hours later and there will be a Polaroid picture on your chest with you with one of those kids. This is how they get you.
Let me do a screen share.
And
please continue.
That's called
share here. People need to understand the callboy scandal in the White House under Bush Sr. Please continue.
Which is why this person said, don't even go to the vice president's house. He did say, if there's a party at the White House, go. That's when Reagan was president. It's a party, that's fine. But any place else, no private parties. So I said to this person, he said, this is how they compromise people. So I said, well, what percentage of people here in Washington, not just congressmen, but their staffs and people that work at these agencies and all, what percentage of people in Washington are compromised in some way? Either with the Polaroid thing or with bribery or blackmail or... This is 1988, Sean, okay? This person looks at me and says, about 99%. 99%, Sean. That was 1988. I think now, if you probably did a survey, we're probably at 99.9%. And the people that are seen as not being compromised, you want to know who isn't compromised? The very few? Just see who's getting attacked. That will give you the best indication of who isn't compromised somehow. And two of the leading people who have been absolutely annihilated have been Donald Trump and General Mike Flynn. So these generals, Hunter Durenis for American Conservative wrote this, and it's really important. He looked at particular, just as an example, as this one general as an example of way all these other generals who are speaking out against Trump. Remember, it was rare that former military would speak on behalf of a candidate. There were a number of people. I believe Colin Powell spoke against Donald Trump last time. This isn't the first time he's done this. Powell's deep state. Always has been. Always will be. This Durenis looks at General James Mattis. Here's what he says. In between Mattis's forced retirement from the Marine Corps and appointment as Secretary of Defense, Mattis joined the board of General Dynamics, where he was paid over $1 million in salary and benefits. Returning to public life, Mattis then spent 2 years cajoling President Trump into keeping the U.S. military engaged in places as disparate as Afghanistan, Syria, and Africa. Quote, "Sir, we're doing it to prevent a bomb from going off in Times Square," end quote, Mattis told President Trump. Left unsaid was the strategic withdrawal would also lead to a precipitous decline in Mattis's future stock options, which he regained after he rejoined General Dynamics following his December 2018 resignation. Today's generals are politicos, bureaucrats, and Washington insiders whose primary skill set lies in gaining influence in the halls of Congress and on cable TV shows. It's very easy and rewarding work if you can get it. I think that says it all about these generals. Now, these generals came out in force, as you mentioned, against President Trump. Well, what the bought-off, lamestream fake media that's a tentacle of the deep state did not report is that 235 generals and admirals came out a couple weeks ago and said, you know, this is wrong. And we support what President Trump is doing, what he's doing in the VA, what he's doing in bringing troops home, what he's doing in looking at Pentagon budgets, and what he's doing around the world to bring peace. Now, here's another way to look at it. President Trump has been nominated twice so far for the Nobel Peace Prize for what's been happening in the Middle East. And I believe that's, from what I understand from my contacts, there are more Middle East countries going to come to the peace table in the very near future. Isn't it interesting that a significant number, several hundred, have also come forward and saying that, and as you mentioned some of the higher echelon names, that they're not supporting President Trump, that they're supporting Biden, who's in his bunker in the basement and was the guy who was part of the Obama administration that, if you will, tried to incite World War III in the Middle East rather than peace initiatives in the Middle East. These people that have come forward are part of the military-industrial complex, just as this writer from American Conservative wrote about Mattis. These are warmongers. These same people that have come out in support of Biden were there the entire time as thousands of Americans were killed, thousands of soldiers killed or injured. These are the people responsible for that policy, and they can't stand peace. And the reason they can't stand peace is because their benefactors, which are the deep state, one of the ways they make their most money is in endless wars. The deep state makes money, they money launder. They make their money through prostitution, through human trafficking, which we spoke about. And they make it through money laundering, through Wall Street. And they make it through wars.
That's right. Eisenhower warned us. So
he did.
It's so easy to say deep state, but the shadow government obviously includes corporations, Boeing, General Electric, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman. What's Cheney's old group? The no-bid contracts in Iraq?
Halliburton. But you know what? It also includes companies like Coca-Cola. All these companies that have signed on to a Marxist terrorist organization that the founder said are Marxist terrorists, this Black Lives Matter group. Okay, all the corporations that have signed on to that, to Marxist terrorists, yeah, they're part of the deep state too.
Yeah, well, and they help sell lies too. Like, look at the NFL. They want to fine coaches for not wearing their masks during a football game. The whole thing is so lunatic. Most people, I'm telling you now, man, we go to restaurants a lot. We talk to the wait staff who are forced to wear these masks. And people are sick and tired of this BS. They know it's BS. It's all a dog and pony show for the stupid governor who's handed down these mandates. My friend Marty Leeds just did a heck of a video about the overt tyranny in Hawaii. He lives in Hawaii. And that governor is so tyrannical. He keeps extending his unconstitutional powers. And by the way, one of his unconstitutional powers has expired. So all of his mandates are null and void. But somehow they're being enforced anyway because people are willingly abiding and the police are on his side. The whole thing is so mind-boggling, but Marty makes the point that all of these people who are responsible for this tyranny and who have carried it out knowingly, knowing that it's unconstitutional, should be rounded up, and they should be tried for their crimes, and they should be executed. And I think he's right.
Once again, EGAY, this is July 30th. Number one, EGAY, we must redouble our efforts. Cases go up, civil liberties go down. Any cases go up, all the Constitution needs it. You need to be in quarantine. You need to be in isolation. You need to listen to our rules. If this goes up, more and more and more and more of your civil liberties need to be stripped away from you. More of your freedoms, your sovereignty. We must redouble our efforts to destroy your lives. Make no mistake about it either. And this is why I call for these people are crimes against humanity, that they should be put on trial. It should be a swift trial. They're already guilty. They're already guilty. And they should be put to death. And that's what I call for. Because it's treason. It's terrorism and it's tyranny. By very definition. When you look at this and you say, we must redouble our efforts, make no mistake about it. Governor Ige here knows exactly what he means. Because in order for him to write that order, for him and Lieutenant Governor Josh Green and Mayor Kim and all these other assholes that are doing this, in order for them to continue to do what they do, when they wrote the initial order, they knew the law. They know the law. They have to know the law in order to make that order. So the fact when that order has expired and they're continuing to do this means that they know exactly what they're doing, and that's what you need to know. They know exactly what they're doing.
I agree. And in fact, we're starting to see a bit of a semblance of that, a situation that's developing where the Justice Department is looking at the governors of New York, New Jersey, Michigan, California, Minnesota, that it had this nursing home policy. Actually, our governor here, Corona Gretchen or Typhoid Whitmer, or the Colonel Klink, if you will, of governors, Gretchen Whitmer. We're one of the largest POW camps in all of North America, that being the state of Michigan here. She still has this policy in place that she instituted in March that took COVID positive patients and sent them to nursing homes where they were COVID negative at the time.
Yeah.
And she will not release the data. I mean, we're talking thousands of people died in those nursing homes after her policy that is still in effect.
Same story with Cuomo. He won't release
Absolutely.
the data either until after the election.
Every single one of those governors should be held accountable for every one of those deaths. I truly believe they should be prosecuted.
So do I. Because they're literally complicit in the deaths of people.
Yes.
And of course, they tell everybody that they need to shut down their businesses and go broke in order to, what, save people? You know what drives me nuts, man. It's injustice. It's in the core of my being. It has always driven me. I just go mad. I go batshit crazy over injustice. And these people, these Democrats, are so frickin' evil that I think my friend Marty is right. And you know what? I think the day is coming. These people really are treading on water if they think they can continue to behave tyrannically like this and people are just going to stand for it forever.
And it's not just Democrats, it's Republicans too. Look, in the state of Michigan, we have a Republican legislature. And they're mute. They're mute. It's the people that I think the latest thing I heard was over 500,000 of us signed petitions that her executive orders are null and void. The Republican legislature just sits there and, I might not get my money from my deep state, deep pocket people, so I'm just going to kind of let her do her thing because they told me to shut up. No, the people, 500,000 of us in Michigan, signed petitions that her executive orders that are killing people have to be stopped. So it's D's, but it's ours too. But the common denominator, I call them Republicrats. They're owned, all of them, owned, operated foot soldiers for the deep state, period.
Yeah, let me play something for you. I think this is going to be a good way to round out our conversation today. Have you seen the hit pieces coming out now about Q? We've seen this for a long time, but they're really ramping this up in a big way again. Let me play this for you. It's only about 40 seconds.
This segment right now is brought to you by the letter Q, specifically QAnon. QAnon.
QAnon.
QAnon. QAnon.
QAnon. QAnon.
QAnon.
QAnon. QAnon.
QAnon.
QAnon.
QAnon.
QAnon.
Let me introduce you to QAnon.
They wore shirts and signs emblazoned with only the letter Q.
Emblazoned with the letter Q.
The fringe conspiracy theory group. Broad and often bizarre. It's difficult to believe.
There are people who actually believe this stuff. It takes one conspiracy and puts them all together.
This is crazy. This is insanity. This is all insane and incoherent.
So what is Q? What is QAnon? What's it all about?
All right, my hat's off to whoever mixed that, because
That's really great.
I love Rush, man. Rush, that's one of the best beats of all time. The great Neil Peart on drums. All right, let me show you guys this. What are they so afraid of, I ask? Well, showed this earlier when Dave was talking. Homosexual prostitution inquiry ensnares VIPs with Reagan Bush. This article then goes on to talk about the crazy Pizzagate conspiracy theory. Well, what are they so afraid of? Q post 4632 and 4631. Q did several of these posts, naming names on both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans. Here's one, Congressman Tony Cardenas being sued in LA County for allegedly sexually abusing a 16-year-old girl. Democrat New Jersey State Assemblyman Neil Cohen was convicted of possession and distribution of child pornography. It goes on, friends. Republican County Commissioner David Swartz pled guilty to molesting 2 girls under the age of 11 and was sentenced to 8 years in prison. It's both sides of the aisle. It goes on and on and on and on, and it names the names. How is blackmail used? Q post 4630. Democrat Illinois State Representative Keith Farnham has resigned and was charged with possession of child pornography and has been accused of bragging at an online site about sexually molesting a 6-year-old girl. You can read it for yourselves, friends. QAnon.pub. Dave, what are they so afraid of?
The truth. They're the light of truth. The deep state are like cockroaches. They can't stand the truth.
Well, you know what's so funny?
So these are the
Let me
same
say,
people.
Go
These are
ahead.
the same people. It's kind of it's interesting. Again, starting back in '88 when I was doing this stuff with the Reagan administration, we spoke about something in a meeting in the White House, and I went back to my hotel that night. And at the time, it was CBS, NBC, ABC for news kind of stuff. And I was watching the evening news, and they started talking about something we spoke about at the meeting. And at the meeting, it's the color black. And when it was reported by CBS, NBC, ABC Evening News, they told the story as if it was white. In other words, it was 180 degrees off, right? So the next day, I said, wow, these guys got it all wrong. When we started the second set of meetings, anybody this morning have anything they need to bring forward? And I raised my hand. I go, hey, I know I'm new here, but I was watching the evening news last night. I think we better get somebody in from the communications office because, well, we talked about this issue at this meeting. And on the evening news last night on CBS, NBC, ABC, Rather, Brokaw, and I think it was Frank McGee or somebody at the time, they all had it backwards. They had it 180 degrees wrong. And everybody started laughing. Everybody started laughing at me, Sean. And they said, Dave, you're a newbie. And the communications department did the exact right thing. Everything, just learn right now, Dave. Everything you see on the news, this is 88 now, everything you see on the news, if you flip it, you're really close to the truth.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so when I say that, because when they start saying that, remember, there was no Russian hacking. That's all conspiracy theory. That's all. They went on that for over 3 years, Sean, right? Well, what was really the truth? There wasn't a Russian hack. It wasn't conspiracy theory. That in fact, Russia, that this was all a deep state move that was planted, if you will, they tried to tar Trump with it to get him out of office. That Russia wasn't colluding with the Trump campaign, but for 3 years, and even to this day, MSNBC and the rest of them, they haven't fessed up. CNN, they haven't fessed up that they told lies to their entire viewing audience for over 3 years. So now, what in that clip you just saw? The information from Q, it's conspiracy theory. It's all false. Who are these people? This is great. So when they're taking that tact, and saying this is illegitimate, you know what the truth is.
That's right.
Right? And the last thing they want is they don't want people to go to the post like you just saw with naming people's names, because that's easily fact checked, right? They don't want people, they just want people to go, I can't go there. It's conspiracy theory. It's made up. Well, no, if in those posts, if you go to those names and you fact check them, in fact, it's accurate. And that's what they don't want people to do. They want people, they are assuming people are lazy, which many times they might be correct in that assumption. People are lazy. They won't do their homework. They won't take the next step. They'll just gobble in the propaganda and then go away.
All right, let me share this with you. This is important. So I've shared this before, but it warrants being shared again. So you'll recall how CNN went out of its way for a very long time, pretty much night after night, trying to debunk the Pizzagate conspiracy, calling it the madness of internet conspiracy sleuths. People have lost their minds to think that there's such thing as pedophile rings in Washington, D.C. All right. Let's walk down memory lane here for just a second. So, Pizzagate, when did that all start? Well, it was probably around, late 2016 into 2017. It got to be a big enough story that the shadow government powers sent in Edgar Madison Welch. In my view, this is what happened, to insert a turd into the punch bowl, throw the baby out with the bathwater, try to paint the picture that everybody doing the investigation into whatever was happening at Comet Ping Pong with James Alefantis is a nut, and it ended in violence with this guy walking in and firing a magic bullet that then hit the Comet Ping Pong server. Okay. That was 2017, June. Dave, had you ever heard of Comet Ping Pong prior to maybe 2016 and a half?
I had not.
Me either. Had you ever heard of James Alefantis?
Actually, I had, just because he was associated with David Brock.
That's right.
For years.
All right. Well, I had never heard of Alefantis. I didn't know he owned Comet Ping Pong.
I didn't know he owned Comet Ping Pong. But I just was aware. What I didn't realize is reportedly the power that Alefantis had.
GQ called him the 49th most powerful man in Washington, D.C. So, yes, more powerful than sitting senators and congresspeople. All right, here's the thing. So, CNN goes out of its way to try to debunk Pizzagate in 2017. But guess what? In 2015, February, so early in 2015, Jennifer Tapper gave an interview to the Washingtonian. Jennifer Tapper is the wife of CNN's Jake Tapper.
Mm-hmm.
Down below, she's asked about her favorite date night restaurant. She says it's Buck's Fishing and Camping. James Alefantis owns that. Her favorite restaurant with the kids? Comet Ping Pong, Dave. Out of all of the wonderful restaurants and eateries, world-class dining in Washington, D.C., her favorite date night restaurant happens to be owned by James Alefantis, and her favorite spot to take her kids is Comet Ping Pong, also owned by James Alefantis. And the mainstream media wants us to believe nothing to see here, folks. Oh, and meanwhile, Dave, they're completely ignoring, if they can, the fact that Hunter Biden is now evidently tied to prostitution and a human trafficking ring in Russia. Nothing to see here, Dave.
Hey, Sean, that story was put forward because of the two Senate Intelligence Committee's report. When was that? Wednesday, September 23rd. In that first 24-hour time period, I could not find a story about what those Senate Intelligence Committees presented in that devastating report to Joe Biden and to his family and to the Obama administration. Not one story on CNN or MSNBC. Now, can you imagine? Can you imagine? In that report from Senator Johnson and Senator Grassley, a lot of credit should be given to them. It showed this incestuous relationship between Hunter Biden, Ukraine, oligarchs, huge amounts of money, payoffs, extortion racket being run by the Bidens. We'll give you $1 billion in aid if you just don't do anything on Burisma, where Hunter and John Kerry's kid are on the board. But then there was the part about $3.5 million given from the mayor of Moscow's wife to Hunter Biden. Now, what do you have to do for $3.5 million? And then Hunter takes some of that money and invests it, if you will, in prostitution and human trafficking out of Russia.
Back up. We lost you for 10 seconds. So he took the 3.5 million and he invested it in what?
And invested it, if you will, in women that were involved in human trafficking and prostitution out of Russia. Now, can you imagine if Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, Jared Kushner, any member, any person with a Trump after their name, can you imagine? Can you, I mean, seriously, they would be having impeachment hearings already today if it was a Trump. But they won't even report on it when it comes down to Hunter. And it's the same old thing. The deep state, a tentacle of deep state, is the bought off lamestream fake media. They will not report on things that are deleterious to deep state puppets. Deep state puppet in this case being Joe Biden and the Obama administration, because this is directly linked in the Obama administration as well.
Dave, it wouldn't even have to be a Trump. It could be a janitor at Mar-a-Lago, someone on the cleaning staff, somebody who once worked for President Trump in one of his hotels. They would hang that person out to dry, and they would never stop showing pictures of Donald Trump shaking the hand of this person at some party from 20 years ago. Now, the mainstream media is so absolutely crooked and criminal that they too should be rounded up and tried for their crimes. And I don't say that lightly, but in a just world, that is what would happen.
John, for years, you spoke about Jeffrey Epstein. I spoke about Jeffrey Epstein. A number of our colleagues in the independent media spoke about Jeffrey Epstein and his links with the pedophile networks and the intelligence agencies, and that it was a front for the intelligence agencies to gain leverage, and about the human trafficking and the child pedophile network side of it, and some things that are even, well, that's bad, but maybe even related to some of these kids dying and organ procurement and all that kind of stuff. We spoke about that. We were demonized. We were beyond conspiracy theorists. That we were off our gore. We were off our rails, right? And then all of a sudden, Jeffrey Epstein got arrested. And it was, wait a minute. For 10 years, I've been told that I'm off on Epstein, that I'm wrong. Where are you guys? You know, and the same thing about Ghislaine Maxwell. You know, I mean, they're still spinning the thing. Well, Ghislaine Maxwell was the person who helped Jeffrey Epstein, and she was the one who procured these girls. Stop it. Ghislaine Maxwell was Epstein's handler. She was in charge of Epstein, not the reverse. And she was, if you will, the handler for the intelligence agencies. She's the brains of the outfit. Epstein was put on point, which is why she's still alive and he's no longer around.
One of the things that I think is really miraculous about the last 8 years, Dave, is you remember as we were approaching 2012, there was all these worries about, well, the end of the Mayan calendar. And, you know, what could that bring? I mean, is it going to be Armageddon? Or will it lead to a great awakening in humankind? Well, it kind of has. I mean, if you look at the last 8 years, how much more do we all know about the shadow powers than we knew in 2010, 2011? I mean, I really focused so much on 9/11 for so long in those early years because that was my great awakening, Building 7. The BBC reporting about the collapse of that building 10 minutes before it went down. Jane Stanley reporting about the collapse of the Salomon Brothers building. While it's standing behind her, the signal fades. 10 minutes later, that building goes down as she had already said it did. So, but that was early on. 2010, 2011, then 2012 hits. Look at the great awakening that's happened from then until now. It really is a great awakening in humanity.
You know, Sean, it has been, and it's not because of people in government or people in the media or people in the Pentagon or people in business. The awakening has happened because of the internet and the independent media. period.
All right, Dave, we've gone kind of long today, but yeah, final word from you, sir.
One last thing on the ballots. Number one, if you can vote in person, I believe vote in person. Number two, what I always do when I hand my ballot in and put it in the machine, and that I look at the person that's there watching me put it in and go, I'm counting on you that my ballot is going to be counted and not stolen or changed. In addition, I encourage all of our listeners to volunteer to be a poll watcher, to volunteer to maybe even work at the polls. The more freedom fighters we have on the front line, the better chance we have that less, if you will, criminal activity will potentially occur on November 3rd.
Dave, can you tell my wonderful audience how they can find your good work?
So, website, davejanda.com. In addition, a YouTube channel named Operation Freedom. It's the same name of my radio show, which airs live out of the People's Republic of Ann Arbor, in Ann Arbor, Michigan, every Sunday from 2 to 5 Eastern. The radio show is called Operation Freedom. Great guests, great content, great analysis. Now, here's how folks can listen live for free. They go to davejanda.com, Sundays, 2 to 5 Eastern. Hit the listen live button. It takes them to Wham Talk 1600 streaming service. Hit that, hit the play, boom, they're with us. If they can't make the show and they want to listen to the podcast, I have those available on the website. I have a subscription side. We have a free side. We also have a subscription side where we have the podcast for all of our shows for our subscribers, $9 a month. I believe one of the biggest bangs for the buck in all the internet. And we have extra shows. I do the WTF political analysis show on video every Wednesday. Every Thursday, I do the Insider Insight show where I bring someone forward, if you will, from behind the curtain to discuss issues. This past week, I had the Google whistleblower on, Zach Voorhees. This week, I have Kirk Wiebe, one of the foremost experts in surveillance platforms, talking about illegal surveillance that the deep state has been doing, is doing, also about the election issues, also looking at directed energy weapons. It's actually a very interesting analysis he provides. But we have that available on our subscription side. We hope folks at least come to listen to the radio show free of charge, but we also hope they become part of our Freedom family and become subscribers.
Yeah, very good. Well, and we all do need to support those truth tellers we admire the most, the people we tune into the most often. And if that means pitching in a couple bucks a month, guys, it really does help keep alternative truth sources like Dave's platform going. And of course, my platform, sgtreport.tv, and a special thanks to my patrons. That's where the exclusive weekly content goes. You can't get it on YouTube. My next exclusive is my weekend wrap with Frank from Quite Frankly, who was just deplatformed by YouTube. His channel's still up, but he's telling me he can't post anything until December 13th.
Oh!
Nearly 3 months. I've never even heard of that before, Dave. So I think they're just trying to silence him through the election. So
I do too.
Yeah, they're just such criminals. Google, YouTube, Jack Dorsey.
Well, what we did with Zach Voorhees' interview, actually, the subscribers thought it was so important, they asked me to upload it for free on our YouTube channel, Operation Freedom. So if folks want to hear, Zach, as you know, Sean, he's kind of the whistleblower of all whistleblowers when it comes to Google and YouTube. That's up on our free of charge there if folks are interested in. Zach really dissects it. He tells the interesting stories how Google went after him and what they did.
Yeah, they tried to destroy him. No, he's a good guy. I've had him on a couple of times, and what I didn't realize the first time I had him on, I just thought he had always worked at Google. He started at YouTube. I think he was at YouTube for like 8 years, and then
he was there for 8 years.
Yeah, so he knows what's going on with YouTube.
He does.
All right. Well, Dave, I certainly appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Friends, thank you so much for sticking with us. We very much appreciate you. Again, a shout out to our patrons and our members over at sgtreport.tv. Thank you so much, friends. God bless. Bye-bye.
This is a peaceful protest. This is looting. If you loot, the next thing you can try to steal is something off of your food tray at the county jail, because you're going to jail. That's a guarantee.